In the movies, every crazy old fart needs a cool old car. Jack Nicholson drove a spiffy yellow 1970 Dodge Challenger two-door in The Bucket List. In Gran Torino, the cranky pensioner played by Clint Eastwood not only owned a 1972 GT Sport, he also used to build cars like that at the Ford plant. When Clint Eastwood walks into a room, you may not know his name, but you know who he is. People see you on television, and they think you make the same amount of money that Clint Eastwood does. But this is PBS. All these shows are done for free. I find that all great directors, and I would include Ben Affleck and Clint Eastwood in that, they have great confidence. And with great confidence comes great freedom for the actor. No one ever thought Clint Eastwood was funny, but he was. There is an established tradition of actors directing films that have a particular, personal meaning for them. Warren Beatty, Clint Eastwood, Kevin Costner, and most recently George Clooney to name a few. Remarkably, their films share an unusually high percentage of being very good. Westerns were all Daddy liked to watch. Give me some Clint Eastwood, some Charles Bronson, and I was a happy girl. It was our father-daughter bonding. The music was the best thing about the Four Seasons and the central asset of the Jersey Boys show. By concentrating on the group's personal wrangling, to the near exclusion of their songs, Clint Eastwood has jettisoned the joy and made this a one-season movie, Winter in New Jersey. And, man, that's bleak. I don't think I could do what Woody Allen or Clint Eastwood or Ben Stiller do, where they direct a movie and they star in it. I would just be like, oh, I don't even want to look at my face. Clint Eastwood has always been a hero. I loved cowboy movies when I was a kid. When I was 5 years old, I was already wearing a cowboy hat and suit. When I grew up, I knew John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, Kirk Douglas, and so on. I'd really like to do a movie again with Tim Robbins and Clint Eastwood. They were really good guys. I watched westerns from the time I was a girl. My dad was a big western fan. I always loved Clint Eastwood movies and Westworld, where the guy gets trapped in a western-themed amusement park. The western motif was fascinating to me. I went from working with Spielberg to working with Clint Eastwood. I might as well just retire. Just because my dad is Clint Eastwood doesn't mean I don't have to work for a living. I'm the first to admit that I like going to, or my memories at least of going to Clint Eastwood movies or Charles Bronson or James Bond. You got to be careful mentioning people as great as Clint Eastwood. You can't put me in the same sentence as that man. I love the Western genre. In fact, one of my dreams is to play a cowboy on screen, like Clint Eastwood. I don't think it's going to happen, but you can always hope. The life of an action star is very short. I want to be an actor like Robert De Niro, like Dustin Hoffman or Clint Eastwood who in their 70s or 80s can still act. I would really love to work with Clint Eastwood. My parents used to talk about Sergio Leone films a lot, and I got really into them. I love Clint Eastwood. I love the camera angles. I love the music. Next, growing up to be Clint Eastwood, I hope. I don't want a Hollywood career. It's wonderful to have the possibility in your life just to win a role in a Clint Eastwood film, and you are the happiest person in the world. Clint Eastwood. Here's a guy who's been involved in so many movies, lots of them masterpieces, and now he's a director. I just like everything I know about him. He's very decisive, he makes up his mind real quick. Some people burn out, and some people like Clint Eastwood. He was a wild, international movie star in his 30s, and he's doing the best work of his life now. Go figure. I grew up loving the John Wayne and Clint Eastwood westerns. When I was growing up, it was Clint Eastwood, it was Harrison Ford and Steve McQueen. These guys were tough. They were leading men, but they were also tough and physical. Gemmel's name guarantees a satisfying story and a thumping good read. I recommend all his heroic creations, Druss the Axeman, The Jerusalem Man, among others, but my favorite has to be Waylander. Clint Eastwood with a crossbow and the same, make my day, punk attitude. I guess my style is a cross between David Bowie and Clint Eastwood. I'm good when I've got a bit of an edge, like the Clint Eastwood type of archetypal character, the tough guy that doesn't say a lot. I think the American Western laid down a kind of subject matter that's about following your instinct or following your gut and having a sort of removed quality from your humanity, and I think Clint Eastwood helped to establish that. The most beautiful gift I have received in my life is the trust of Clint Eastwood. When you have this respect and this kind of responsibility on your shoulders, of course you bring the best of yourself. I'm a big fan of Clint Eastwood, but the westerns I draw from most directly come from an earlier period in Hollywood. I actually look back at movies like Rio Bravo and others I've liked over the years, and I capture pictures from the movies and use them as a reference for the scenes I create. I still want to write Clint Eastwood a letter saying, I'm sorry for all us wimp actors. You're the truth. I guarantee he's not the person you want to fight, even now. You look at him, and you don't want to mess with him. He would still take you down. When you're a young boy, you're looking at older men for role modeling. Before I loved De Niro, I loved Clint Eastwood, I loved John Wayne, and James Bond. I was growing up with a single mom who'd be at work when I came home from school, so I'd just turn on the TV. I grew up watching old Clint Eastwood westerns. I adopted him as one of my male role models. I did a picture 40 years ago with Carol O'Connor and Telly Savalas, God rest their souls, and Clint Eastwood, called Kelly's Heroes, which we filmed in Yugoslavia for 6 months. Clint Eastwood is aging beautifully, but someone like Burt Reynolds and others are practically destroying their faces in the amount of work they have. John Lee Hancock is someone that I had admired from afar. I think he is a wonderful director, in the tradition I would say both of Clint Eastwood and Frank Capra. I thought Clint Eastwood was cool in all the Western movies, but I'm not gonna drive somewhere he's at and stand in line to see him. I told Missy, my wife, the only person I'd stand in line for is God Almighty. You made the universe? Alright, I'll get in line. Dirty Harry, for example. Clint Eastwood was not a rogue cop. He was a maverick cop, but he was a good guy. What's weird is that I work with these directors and then I start channeling them. I kind of turn into them a bit, which is cool when you're working with Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is an extraordinary director because he knows the value of a buck. He knows where it will show on the screen. Beowulf is not a superhero. He has a talent, very much like Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven. He's very good at staying calm in the right moment, but he does bad things. It's very much about having talent in a tight spot. Every single director-actor I talked to, from Warren Beatty to Clint Eastwood to George Clooney, said the biggest mistake they made is not shooting enough footage of themselves. You see a Clint Eastwood movie, and you might not know if it's from Universal or Warner Brothers or another studio. He has affiliations with so many studios now, but there was a time when you just look at a movie and think, oh, that's a Warner Brothers film. In France, Clint Eastwood is like a god. My dad traveled a lot, so I only usually saw him on weekends, growing up. His favorite actors in the world were Clint Eastwood and Burt Reynolds. If Clint or Burt had a movie out, we would go to the movies. He didn't like movies, generally, unless Clint or Burt were in them. My favorite movie is The Outlaw Josey Wales with Clint Eastwood, a guy who gets his family killed by the bad guys then goes on a journey of revenge, eventually discovering himself, very existential. The guys I grew up with, my cinematic heroes, have always been men of few words, but of action. Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.